answers.
You bring it out in the simplest terms.
Yeah.
What is that hate? Open the school seems to be.
Here we go again with the school shit. The I Promise School is a publicly funded school. It's a public school. Here in New York, there are many schools that are named after famous people. DeWitt Clinton High School, Adlai Stevenson High School. I mean, the list goes on and on. George Washington High School. Nobody says, hey, George Washington opened that school for kids. It's a public school. The I Promise School is a public school. The media members who talk about LeBron and try to act as advocates or representatives for LeBron James' interests, no, when they talk about the school, they try to imply that he paid for it with his money and that he maintains it with his money. That's not the case. All it is a charter school that he donated $2 million to from his foundation, not from his own pockets. $2 million came from his own foundation. That means that they were sponsors who donated money to the LeBron James Foundation, and they took $2 million of that and forwarded it to a school, probably to hide the fact that they took $10 million and put it in their own damn pocket. But of course, what I'm saying is alleged. But we know that foundations are huge Ponzi schemes, but that's neither here nor there. Point being is this: they sent $2 million from the LeBron James Foundation, not from his own private accounts, but from the LeBron James Foundation to the school so that he could justify his association with the school. But in reality, what is it? It's it's really a Nike project. That's why they have all the Nike paraphernalia in the school. And I mean, it's a cool thing. A lot of the kids, they get scholarships to colleges. It's a great thing. But is LeBron paying for any of that? No. That's Nike paying for that. And it's great brand building for LeBron. It's also great marketing for Nike. So everybody wins. But let's stop mentioning the school when it comes to the great things that LeBron James has done. He's not the first athlete to open a school. David Robinson opened a school. Jalen Rose opened a school. Nobody talks about them. But this is a part of the LeBron James Christ programming, like he's here to save the world.
All right. My turn.
Yep.
In one way, I was very surprised by this because I don't like the word hate applied to LeBron. Now,
because nobody really hates this dude. He's just an idiot. Like, LeBron is just dumb. A dumb person is someone who speaks about topics that they have no knowledge of or no expertise in. If LeBron is speaking about anything other than basketball, he makes a fool of himself. But because there are so many people out here who want to be entertained with fodder, they encourage professional athletes to speak about topics that they have no expertise in, because the major corporations are puppeting these athletes. So if you can get a large mass of people to believe that you actually are a leader, that means that that athlete can be used to lead the people towards the products that the corporation who controls the athlete is selling. And that's really the end game. So LeBron, get out there and talk about race. So by the way, when we release these new LeBrons, people will come buy them. And maybe when they're in the Nike store, they'll buy other paraphernalia.
The racial angle to this, you could be just dead right on that. That if that's operating at the base of this, then all these bets are off, and this discussion from here on is rendered moot. It's just hard for me to believe that LeBron James is hated. I think he can be overrated. If that's operating, I'm with that, because I've been in that camp since 2004, what was my first year on Cold Pizza? Yeah, 2004. I think it was LeBron's second year in the league. And I have all these issues, just to me, very objective issues with LeBron as a basketball player. I also think he's still the best passer in the game, and I do still think he's the greatest driver of the basketball I have ever seen. Ambidextrous, he's left-handed naturally. I just never see anything like the force that he is at 6'9", 270 or 80 pounds going to the basket. But beyond that, to say that he's hated, well, then it has to be on social stands, on racial social stands. That
LeBron James is despised based on his ignorance. For him to say that every time black people leave their house, they're scared that they're going to be killed by the police, that's just a lie. The vast majority of so-called black people, if they have to worry about someone trying to hurt them, it's probably going to be one of these low-level niggas who thinks that everybody owes him something, so I'm going to try to rob this woman or rob this guy or rob this kid because they have on nicer shoes than me or nicer clothes than me, or they have on a chain or earrings, or they drive a car that I don't have. That's really who most black people who are upstanding are more concerned with than the police. Now, is racism in the police force a problem all across America? Absolutely. But is it a top 10 or even a top 15 problem? In my estimation, no, it is not.
On, you got me. But I look at his followers on social. He's 87 million on Instagram. 50 million on Twitter. So that's 137 million people. I don't know how many cross over between Instagram and Twitter, but it's 137 total million followers on IG and Twitter. Do they hate him, or do some of them resent him? Are they fascinated enough, even though they resent him, that they're going to follow him?
Yeah, I think that's a part of it, Skip. Sometimes we and I think what they did, I think it was 70,000 tweets over a period of time, and who got the most, I guess, vitriol or negative tweets, and this was it. Skip, okay, maybe an OKC Kevin Durant, okay, maybe Golden State, but Skip, 24 states, they only 50 states, Skip.
Okay,
you got damn near half the country.
Right. Well, Shannon, what do you expect when you have a person who says the things that LeBron James says and really can't back them up or corroborate them? Muhammad Ali used to go on TV shows and banter or debate back and forth with the TV show host. I'm talking about real journalists. He'd banter with or debate with people like William Buckley. When has LeBron James ever done that? His image is so protected. He only speaks with people who not only he knows are going to support him, like a Rachel Nichols, but really only people who work for him, like that Uninterrupted podcast and all that other goofy shit. Like he knows that he's not really about anything.
To attempt to speak in generalities here for the white community.
Okay.
In my time, covering sports, analyzing sports, closely watching everything that's happening sort of inside and on the periphery of sports, the most beloved black athlete within the white community to me is LeBron James. He just is, because he's a really nice guy off the court. And
well, probably amongst liberal whites.
And he takes not just stands, he takes great stands.
Yes.
Whether you believe in it or not.
Right.
I do believe in his stance.
Right.
I said it from the start. I think he's the greatest thing that happened of athletes speaking out. No one's ever been greater. I mean, I know we can go back to Ali, Bill Russell, but again, in the current climate we're in, nobody has been more outstanding and more impactful than LeBron off the court.
Impactful how, Skip Bayless? You mean being used as a shield for the Democratic Party? That's the only thing of impact that he's ever done, is basically act as a proxy shepherd for the Democratic Party, which is something that they've used many black entertainers for the last 50 years. They used Jackie Robinson for that back in the 60s when he was trying to bring so-called blacks into a certain political sphere or political understanding. I would ask Skip Bayless, since he thinks that LeBron James is so deep, quote 5 things that LeBron James has said that when you heard them, you said, wow, that's deep. That's all I would ask Skip Bayless and Shannon Sharp to do. Now, I align LeBron James with Oprah. Oprah is another person that people claim is so wise. And they can't come up with 5 things that Oprah has ever said in her entire life that were memorable. And that's because most people don't realize that they're being entranced and enchanted by sorcerers and sorceresses. The television is a method to enchant you. It's known as a black mirror or a scrying mirror, the same as your phone. When you go on the internet, there's a reason why you type in www, aka 232323, adds up to what, 69, as above, so below. Why do you think the icon for the internet is the planet Saturn? Because Saturn is the gateway from one realm to another. That's all the internet is a portal to go from one world to another. Same as the TV. So that's why you become so enchanted by these characters on television.
I think, this is just me, but even white people who don't agree with the stance, I think they have grudging admiration for his courage to speak out.
Well, I don't think so, Skip. That's why it's so easy for them to say shut up and dribble. That's why it's so easy.
Right, but that's not the liberal Caucasian. Once again, Shannon is trying to cast every so-called Caucasian into the same box, which is interesting to me because he has an infatuation with Caucasian women. The person who says shut up and dribble was Laura Ingraham, who I don't believe is a liberal Caucasian, and she has the right to say that. I think that anyone who's intelligent would tell people that they should understand their limitations. That's a part of intelligence, or as Stephen A. Smith would say, I'm smart because I know what I don't know. If you don't understand what you're not good at, or what you're not proficient in, or what you're not knowledgeable of, you're going to make a complete fucking fool of yourself. And that's what LeBron James does consistently. Once again, they're enchanted by him because he can play basketball well. Suddenly that means that we should look at him and say, okay, I like what LeBron thinks about politics. I should follow that. I like what LeBron thinks about society. I should follow that. I don't care what this dude thinks about anything. It's your job to entertain me for 2.5 to 3 hours. That's it. And until so-called black people learn that it's not the job of a basketball player or a football player or a baseball player to try to make an impact upon your mind when it comes to socio-political issues, we're going to continue to be misled. And that's why I give Jordan credit, because he would not allow himself to be used politically. At least for the most part.
Cool, we're going to go how far right we're going to go with this discussion. But there's also a core of this, of people, black, white, whatever color, who just get sick and tired of him because I thought he cakewalked through the East, but he went to 8 straight finals. Mm-hmm. He's been to 10 finals in the last 14 years, not counting this year.
Well, when it comes to that, I think that people are just tired of the media trying to make people think that just because he made an appearance in the finals, that should count almost like a win. LeBron's the first athlete that I've ever seen where we're constantly told that his appearances in the finals should matter. Like, we never heard that about Jerry West. No one ever said Jerry West went to 9 finals. That's why he should be considered a top 5 greatest player. No one ever said that. It's always been about victories. Like, no one cares who won silver at the Olympics. It's about who won the gold. Much less who was good enough to make it as one of the top 10 sprinters. Nobody asked that question. Who won the gold?
The bubble. And I think a lot of people thought the bubble was an asterisk championship because the Lakers sort of stayed together during the bubble, and I called it cubic zirconia ring.
And I agree with that. It was a cubic zirconia ring. And I think especially if the Lakers come back in the next few seasons and struggle, maybe get knocked out of the playoffs in the first round or not even make the playoffs, people are going to look at that ring with a lot more suspicion.
They don't say that about football, but look at the Ravens. Ravens lost how many players to COVID? Mm-hmm. They had to miss multiple games. Lamar Jackson had to miss games, right?
All right, but
they didn't win the championship. So what are you talking about? That's a false equivalency.
But that's what I'm saying. Okay. So because LeBron, they go to the bubble and they overcame.
Okay. But speaking of social...
Overcame what? All the teams were in the same environment. And most of the guys didn't want to be there. Look, there's nothing against LeBron. You beat a 5th seed in the finals. So it's obvious that, there were some factors there that threw things off kilter. Because the Miami Heat, they were not a finals level team.
I think LeBron inspires a lot of resentment because he comes across
as being ungrateful, spoiled, self-worshipful.
This front-running showboat who's always out there beating his own chest. He's always trying to tell you how great he is. He's always trying to make his own case that he's greater than Jordan.
Right.
That about clinched it, right? When we pulled off the 3-1 comeback.
Let me ask you a question. Does the networks mention ratings? Do they say who has the #1 comedies? Who has the #1 sitcom? Who has the #1 this?
Okay.
So that's a part of it, right?
Sure.
Everybody pats themselves on the back.
Yeah, I have no problem with LeBron James saying that he's great, but that means that you have to win. You can't be 3-6 or 4-6 in the finals and tell me that you're the best player ever. I'm sorry. At the very least, you got to be 500. Get to 6-6, and then we can have the conversation.
So this is not, see, that's the thing, Skip. Everybody wants to make it seem that everything LeBron does is unique to LeBron. Skip, in the 80s, people don't realize this, but Magic Johnson and Larry Bird was in every finals, every NBA finals in the 80s. There was not one final in which Magic Johnson or Larry Bird did not compete. Okay. And nobody said they were tired of him going or they were cakewalking.
Well, here's the thing with that. Number one, Shine needs to calm the fuck down. Number two, we didn't see Larry Bird against Magic Johnson in every finals in the 80s. There were different permutations of their appearances. So sometimes we saw Magic against Dr. J, then we would see Magic against Larry, then we saw a couple of times Larry Bird against the Rockets, then we saw Magic against the Pistons. So we got some variety there. It wasn't like LeBron James just keep coming back every year to get his ass whooped in the finals over and over again, and when he does win, it takes some magical, mystical shit to happen, like Ray Allen has to hit a three, or Draymond has to get suspended, or there has to be a global pandemic. That's why people doubt LeBron so much. Because when it's a regular year, he always seems to get his ass whooped or lose.
Rivalry in the history of the sport.
And
it was also black versus white, which was like from the networks. Thank you, God.
I'm not denying that, but nobody was tired of that. When did we get to...
Maybe because Larry Bird and Magic Johnson were a lot more charismatic than LeBron James. Maybe because they were a lot more likable than LeBron James. Maybe because they made far fewer excuses than LeBron James. Maybe because when the going got tough, they didn't run to other teams like LeBron James. Now, of course, people are going to say, well, Magic Johnson already played with a super team. You know what's interesting? And the Lakers were probably the most talented team top to bottom, especially in the mid-'80s. So I don't dispute that. But the Lakers had barely won shit until Magic got there. I think they may have had 4 titles as a franchise. I believe they won 3 with George Mikan when they were back in Minneapolis. And they only won 1 with Jerry West. So they'd had Kareem for like 4 years before Magic got there. And then all of a sudden they go into the finals every damn year. So he was the catalyst for all of that. When it comes to Larry Bird, they said, well, the Celtics, they had a super team. Well, the year before Larry Bird got there, they had something like the worst record in the NBA or near the worst record. I think they had won maybe 29 games. And then the year he gets there, they win 60 or 61 games. And he was the only change in their roster. And then after his first season, they draft Kevin McHale, and I believe they traded for Robert Parrish, and they win the championship. So it's obvious that Larry Bird was the catalyst. I've never had a problem with LeBron James leaving Cleveland. Never. But the fact of the matter is that he went to Miami, joined a team with a player who'd already won a championship as the best player on that team, also brought on Chris Bosh, who was considered top 5, top 3 maybe at his position, and most likely top 15 in the NBA. They were considered a super team, all in their prime. Their only antagonists really being the Boston Celtics. The Bulls kind of came out of nowhere. They were a team who were growing in the late 2000s, and by 2011 they had reached their peak. But no one really took them seriously because they didn't have the offense. You get to the finals, you face a Dallas Mavericks team that you're supposed to beat, and it would be one thing if you lost that series because Dallas was just a better team, but LeBron put up his normal numbers. The fact of the matter is that this guy averaged 18 points a game in the finals, and that's rounding up. So that's why people have these issues with LeBron. He comes up small in some of his biggest moments, either stat-wise or mentally, and then never wants to hold himself accountable.
We should admire it.
Yeah, but he's only 4 and 6 in the finals.
But Skip, so because he's 4 and 6, that means he's not great.
Yeah.
Wayne Gretzky.
It's not about him not being great. You don't call him great. You call him the GOAT. So let's understand that. I don't think that anyone would say that LeBron is not a great basketball player or a great athlete. At least almost anyone. But when you start to call him the quote-unquote GOAT, that's something different.
Every Stanley Cup he went to, is Gretzky not great?
Right, but did Wayne win more Stanley Cups than he lost? Somebody let me know. I know that he played with Edmonton, and then he played with the the LA Kings and I believe the Rangers. But I know that he won most of his Stanley Cups with the Edmonton Oilers. I don't know what his record was when he got to the Stanley Cup Finals, but I'm pretty sure he won more than he lost.
Okay, but think about what LeBron does on social. Half the time I just cringe and hide my eyes because I'm activating playoff mode.
Okay.
In his first year in LA.
Right.
And you know what happened down the stretch?
Right.
They didn't even make the playoffs. And then recently, a storm is coming. A storm? Because in the fourth quarter of those 6 games against Phoenix, he went 11 for 30, that's 36.7%. He went 2 of 12 from 3, that's 16.7%. And he made 6 of 12 free throws, which is 50%. And
I've said this for probably the last 3 or 4 years. Really the last 3 years since he's been on the Lakers. If you have the courage and the strength to take a LeBron James shoulder to the chest, you'll have a pretty good chance of guarding him relatively well. Because ever since he's left Cleveland, he's had a problem beating his defenders to the basket.
those 6 fourth quarters, he shot no free throws because I think a lot of people believe what I believe. He's such a lousy free throw shooter, especially late in games, that he runs from the free throw line. So I think a lot of people say, you're just overrated and you're always beating your own chest.
How can a man that has done what he's done be overrated? Now, remind you.
Easy. When people like you call him the greatest player ever. You're the one who's setting the standard. And I've said this repeatedly. LeBron James' toxic support from the TV media, they create the framework for a lot of the criticism that LeBron James receives. And LeBron doesn't get it. He's never going to be considered the greatest player ever other than by his fan base, which is relatively sizable. But for the population at large, it's just never going to happen. And he's at the peak of his popularity right now. And that's what people don't truly grasp. Michael Jordan is considered the greatest player ever by around 75%, not only around 75 to 80% of the people who might be polled. You know, when they take these polls, normally it's Jordan with around 75%, and then LeBron and Kareem and Magic and Larry Bird are left to be divvied up amongst the rest. But this is as visible and as popular as LeBron James is going to be when it comes to how he's viewed or how he's esteemed in the NBA hierarchy of the greatest players ever. People forget that back in 2011, they were having these same conversations about Jordan and Kobe. Kobe had 5 championships, and everyone was saying, can Kobe match Michael and have a second three-peat? If he does, is he better than Michael? Now, since he's retired, of course you have people who might say Kobe is a top 5 player, but most people have Kobe either in the lower part of their top 10 or, like myself, around 11 or 12. Because I've heard other people who've listed their greatest NBA players ever who also had Kobe around 11 or 12. So LeBron James, you know, if his last 3 or 4 years in the NBA are not relatively successful, when we view him and we say, okay, he won 4 championships, but look at how many times he flamed out. Look at how many times he embarrassed himself. There may be those who don't even view him as a top 5 all-time great. Who knows?
Came out straight out of high school, and he's ascended to levels that even by his standard, people didn't think he could ascend to. How is that overrated when for 17 straight years you averaged 25 points or more per game? You're a 13-time first-team All-NBA player. Nobody has more than 11. You're 17 straight years starting in the All-Star game. Nobody can touch that. You look at what he's done. He's the youngest to 5, 10, 15, all the way up to 35,000 points. And he's 10 finals, 4 MVPs, 4 finals MVPs. And that's overrated?
He's a lousy shooter.
Skip, you...
Hey, Skippy cut me. He's a lousy shooter, Shannon. You know it and I know it.
Superstardom, he's lousy.
Skip, that's like saying this actress, because she can't walk in heels, she's not any good.
Okay, but...
No, not quite. That's not a very good analogy. But it'd probably be more like there's this actress who's drop dead gorgeous, but she keeps going to the Oscars and losing because even though she's a great actress, she's not as great as the actress a generation before who kept winning at the Oscars. But someone like you, who's a part of her marketing team, keeps saying that she's a better actress than that actress from the previous generation. But, you know, some of the reasons why she might not be esteemed as high is because of her hair color or, you know, her lack of height, something like that. when it's really because she's not as good an actress or not as attractive as the actress from the previous generation. It's okay, Shannon.
Is nitpicking?
Yes.
It's half the battle, if not 2/3 of the
Skip,
battle.
there's no way you get 35,000 points if you can't shoot.
Greatest driver.
Yeah, LeBron is a decent shooter. He's a great enough shooter to diversify his offensive attack. The best shooting he's ever done were his last 2 or 3 years in Cleveland, the second time around. But he's normally been a streak shooter. He's worked very hard on improving himself as a shooter. I'm not going to say he's a bad shooter. He's just streaky.
So how is he getting the ball in the basket if he's not shooting it?
3-point shooter. He's 34.5 for his career. It's a terrible percentage.
Okay, let me ask you a question. What is Jordan and what is Kobe? They're greater shooters than LeBron James, but what are they from 3-point?
Okay, well, obviously, Jordan did not emphasize the 3-point.
But but considering that they got a percentage on him, so that means he did shoot enough to qualify. So what is that?
Okay.
Is it greater than 35, 34.5?
No, it is not. Free throws, absolutely, because LeBron's a career 73% free throw shooter. It's just pathetic for his greatness. It's his Achilles heel. And nobody, since he entered the league in the last 5 seconds of games, since he entered the league, no one's even close to him and missed free throws in games that were tied or close.
What great player had everything? Could Michael Jordan shoot threes like Steph? So that means he's not great then, right?
I'll bet he would have if they had emphasized it. I'll bet if you'd given him a couple of off seasons to...
Shannon begins so exasperated with Skip. Skip is like a chihuahua to keep barking.
Focus just on threes.
He could have.
We did have this game against Portland,
Yes.
right? Would he make 7 in the first half?
I mean, LeBron has had games where he's made 8.
He has had some hot shooting games.
Okay.
But he's also missed since he came into the league, nobody has missed more last-second shots in close games than LeBron.
And nobody's made more.
Okay, but he's
part of
made
it.
relatively few compared to how many he's missed. He's missed 97 of those shots since he came into the league. Dwayne's the only one close to him at 77.
Skip, what guy has made more game-winning shots than he's missed? Name the guy. I want to know the guy. Did Jordan make more than Kobe, KD, Dame, Steph? Skip, come on now.
He's missed so many, and he's run from the free throw line so many times.
The number says he's the most clutch. That's what the numbers say. If you want to take,
LeBron is definitely more clutch than he gets credit for. But one of the reasons why he has the moniker of being unclutch or the reputation for not being clutch is because of that stretch from the late 2000s into the early 2010s, where it was very clear that he allowed the trash talk from the media, led by Skip Bayless, to, kind of put a whammy or a curse on him. He became very self-doubtful in pivotal moments when he really wasn't when he first came into the NBA. And he hasn't been in the last few years, even though sometimes he still has little brain freezes, like in the bubble against Denver. When he was supposed to catch the ball and he didn't move, Rondo said he was inbound in the pass and LeBron didn't move, he had to throw it to AD.
in which he's made to what he's attempted, the numbers say LeBron is the clutches.
Okay, but think about the meltdowns. This is why people think he's overrated. The meltdown against Boston in 2010, and his insiders had to say that he had to be sedated before games 4, 5, and 6 of that series. The meltdown against Orlando the year before. The meltdown the first year in the finals.
Skip, you got to stop with this melt because you Skip.
They're meltdowns.
The man averaged against Orlando 38, 8, and 8.
Right, but Shannon, tell us about what he shot from the field against Orlando. And this is where, a lot of the LeBron James fans, they don't get it. They love to cast LeBron as this underdog. Going into that series against Orlando, Cleveland was the favorite. They got smacked around in that series. I think that series went 6 games. And one of the games that Cleveland won was because LeBron James had a game-winning shot. I don't even think that LeBron shot 40% in that series. If he shot over 40%, it was barely over 40%. Orlando, they really locked him down. He put up big numbers because he took so many shots.
He had a meltdown.
Go look at 4, 5, and 6.
Skip. Even if he averaged 2 points a game in 4, 5, and 6, how do you get to average 38? Now
Because he was taking 35 shots a game.
KD averaging 32. LeBron averaged 38, 8, and 8.
Right, but KD shooting 55% from the field. LeBron James barely shot 40%. These guys, they have the same arguments every day because neither one of them researches anything in depth. If they really started to research in depth, they'd be able to shatter a lot of their opponents' arguments or debate points because it's just silly to me. They just regurgitate the same shit over and over again. Shannon's trying to claim that LeBron had a great series in 2009 against Orlando. He did not. He put up huge cumulative numbers, sure, but his proficiency numbers were not good.
Had a meltdown.
Well, 2011 in the finals against Dallas, that was awful.
Skip, you can't take one incident and says, okay, you try.
I have to stop you there because that's not just one incident. That was without a doubt the worst meltdown that I've ever seen a so-called superstar have in a big moment, and it wasn't like it was just one game. LeBron literally melted down for about 4 straight games.
Career off of 2011.
2013 Game 6, last 3 minutes. Go check it out. Last 3 minutes.
You see what you do?
Tell me what you see.
Skip, you see what you do?
I see meltdown.
You take it a 48-minute ball game and you'll break it down to minute seconds.
Well,
Come on, Skip.
these were not minute seconds. These were 3 minutes. So look at the last.
I just want to make
just
sure.
call up the play-by-play and tell me what you see.
Just so I'm hearing you correctly, every great player has played great all 48 minutes. They've never had a bad stretch, a bad 30 seconds, a bad.
I don't think that Skip is saying that, but here's the thing about that LeBron James series against the Spurs in 2013. He wasn't bad. He was terrible in that series until Game 6 down the stretch of that game. He was definitely going to be the GOAT of that series had they lost. He was bad games 1 through 3, and then in Game 4, D. Wade is the one who really stepped up and had a great game, and then LeBron had a bunch of garbage points down the stretch of that game after D. Wade set the tone in Game 4. That's how LeBron seemingly had decent stats in that series, because in Game 6, he really showed out down the stretch, even though he had a few bad turnovers in the fourth quarter, and then in Game 7, he was great. But from Games 1 through 5 and the early part of Game 6, he wasn't good at all. Other than Game 4, we had a bunch of garbage points.
A bad game, a bad 4 games. Every great player.
I'm giving you a litany. I'm giving you 2014. Go look at Games 3 and 4 back in Miami. He just disappeared in those 2 games, and they got blown out by a record finals margin.
Yeah, in 2014, he had a bunch of paper tiger stats.
You telling me I wouldn't be able to go back and find any great player in a playoff stretch?
Sure, but a lot of people think he's the GOAT.
Okay, then.
And that's why, I don't know if hated's the right word, but a lot of people think he's just overrated. They don't hate him.
Nobody's think LeBron is overrated.
Plenty of people think that LeBron is overrated, Shannon Sharp. You need to stop, brother. Plenty of people think that.
Yes, they do.
If you think LeBron James is overrated, given his resume, you don't know basketball.
Well,
you don't know basketball.
Then I don't know basketball.
Well, you don't.
Okay.
Shannon said, I finally got him to admit he don't know shit. Let's go to the next segment.
Agree with you on that one.
I have carefully watched LeBron since day one, and I have been first guessing this and ahead of this curve all the way, and he is overrated when you try to make the case he's the GOAT. It's just shameful.
Okay, so that's the only reason. So if I don't say he's the GOAT, he's not overrated. So that's what you're going.
Yeah, I would agree with that. If you stop saying that he's the GOAT, then no, you would not be overrating him, because I have LeBron as a top 5 player ever. Slightly above Larry Bird. Now, peak for peak, I don't think that LeBron is as great as Larry Bird was. I think that Bird from 84 to 88 was greater than LeBron was at his peak. Not by much, like by a sliver. LeBron's peak, in my view, was probably from around, those 4 years in Miami, probably 2010 to 2014. His overall peak, offense and defense. Offensively, I think that his peak was from 2016 to 2018. But I think that Bird from 84 to 88, wow, unbelievable.
If you don't, but you do. That's why we're here.
No.
You say best player on planet and GOAT. It's laughable to me. It's not even close. Not even in the same stratosphere with that guy in Chicago.
Skip.
Well, you know it and I know it.
So that's
what people are reacting to. He's overrated because the media. Listen,
yeah, Jordan had about 3 different stretches of quote unquote peaks that would probably make him the best player ever if you just look at what he did on offense and defense. I mean, damn. I mean, shit. Even if you go to his rookie year, this guy led the league in points scored, raw points scored for the season as a rookie.
Media, the sports media, has never sort of idolized and protected a player.
Jordan
has no.
Jordan.
Stop.
Jordan.
No.
Jordan. And you know it.
I don't know.
You do
I was
know
in
it.
the middle of it.
Jordan.
No.
Jordan. They protected and idolized him.
6-0 in the finals.
Skip. You see? That's it.
6-0. 6-0.
Because that's what matters, Shannon. I mean, at the end of the day, how are you going to argue that? The man was 6-0 in the finals. Never went to a game 7. Never had a flame out in the finals.
We're not, Skip. That's not that. Okay, he did that. Mm-hmm. He is 6-0 with 6 MVPs.
Yeah.
Yo, the LeBron James fanboys in the media, they be rolling around in bed at night sweating. 6-0. I can't believe that nigga went 6-0. How did I come against that shit? I got to think of something. They roll around, roll off the bed and say, oh shit, I was sleeping.
Say he's never had a bad game. To say he's never had a bad stretch would be disingenuous.
Skip, you got me biting my tongue. I can't even say disingenuous.
Had a couple, but not like this guy. This guy's got epic fails all over his resume, and people just wipe the slate clean.
Nobody wiped the slate
Yeah.
clean.
Mm-hmm.
You Skip, it's gotten so bad with you. You'll go back to 3 minutes in the ball game. You remember that game in 2014?
Skip do be doing that shit. Skip and go back. Yeah, back in 2011, when you see LeBron checked out of the game with 2 minutes 59 seconds left because of cramps. Because of cramps, Shannon.
Final 3. You talking the final 3 minutes of game 6. You went to 3 minutes in the game.
2013.
Let that sink in.
Be 3 minutes.
In an 18-year.
He should be 3-7 in the finals, except for the greatest clutch shot I ever saw by Rick.
3-7. Shit, that motherfucker should be 1-9 in the real finals, man. The only finals I really legit give LeBron credit for was that one against OKC. The rest of them shits was fugazi.
Saved his legacy. It's a fact. It's just a fact. You can just go look it up.
Skip, I mean, just think about this, Skip. If somebody went back and over your life and says back in 2nd grade at 6:45 p.m. you did this, and so everything else you've done is wiped away. That's what you just did. You based everything you went to.
No, he didn't do anything like that, Shannon. But no, that's okay. You keep making shit up.
In the finals, I'm doing his resume in the finals that he's been to 10 times.
You see?
This was more of a love to hate situation. I like because of his success.
Yes.
A bit of jealousy. I didn't view it necessarily. I don't know.
No, there was a racial component there, Jenny Tab, but it's just not as big as Shannon Sharp wants to make it out to be. He's always trying to cast LeBron James as this Christ figure who's always under attack, and he's the victim and the martyr and all this other stuff. But I mean, there's the race stuff there that is a component because of what LeBron James alleges to represent and a lot of the confusion that ensues from that. Kyrie's disliked for a multitude of reasons. Some of his stances about race as well, but also the fact that he has a responsibility to play as many games as he's able to when he's healthy. And then of course you have Kevin Durant and James Harden. So the real focus of this conversation should have been, why are the Nets so hated? But we already know why that is. It's because they're the basketball version of the Expendables. But anyway, peace.